A tunnel, a bright light, an out-of-body experience. We're told death is the end. But what about people who came back from the brink? All around the world, people report near-death experiences. Strange phenomena, divine beings, miraculous stories of the impossible. Back from certain death. And decades of scientific research into it all. What's so big that it could be the breakthrough of an age? How are consciousness, the brain, and the soul intertwined? Perhaps the great beyond is closer than we think. It's time to get into the undisputable patterns, capturing the attention of scientists, doctors, atheists, priests, moms, and pops. This is bigger than we ever could have imagined. Near-Death Experiences Part 1. Amazing Stories of the Afterlife.
Hey Ben, did you hear about that little girl who's real-life Alice in Wonderland?
What, did she like go down a rabbit hole in a tree and enter another dimension?
Actually, that's pretty close. So 9-year-old Annabelle Beam was playing outside and fell 30 feet headfirst down a hollow tree she'd climbed. She hit her head 3 times on the way to the ground and was knocked unconscious. But the craziest part was when she woke up. She started talking about visiting heaven, and there were real-life miracles to back up her claims.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of deep dive we're going on today. Only ours is metaphorical. We won't be actually diving down any like hollow trees or rabbit holes, actual rabbit holes. But anyway, welcome to Edge of Wonder. I'm your host Ben, and this is Rob, and we're gonna break down the mysteries around near-death experiences.
We've all heard about out-of-body experiences, miraculous dances with destiny, and people being saved from catastrophes. But what's really going on with these brushes with death? Let's go into the truth of it all that mainstream science doesn't have much time for.
What happened was there was a branch 30 feet in the air of this massive cottonwood tree that had broken off, and when it did, it left a hole. Well, they were up on one of the other branches sitting, and that branch began to give way. And so Annabelle, in an attempt to get safely down, she went inside that hole and fell 30 feet head first to the bottom of the hollowed out cottonwood tree.
So what happened to little Annabelle Beam? She says that after she was knocked unconscious, she went to heaven and sat on Jesus' lap. In her vision, Jesus had a beautiful, long, white robe, dark skin, and a big beard that reminded her of Santa Claus. She saw the golden gates of heaven and her great-grandmother Mimi, who had died a year earlier.
Then whenever I was there, I was like, Jesus, can I stay here with you where there is no more pain? He said, no, Annabelle, I have plans for you on earth that you cannot fulfill in heaven.
Inside the tree, I went to heaven, and I sat on Jesus' lap, and he told me, Annabelle, whenever the firefighters get you out, there will be nothing wrong with you.
Jesus told her he would heal her, and Annabelle said that as she woke up, a small angel like a fairy was keeping her company. She said that God winked at her through the body of the angel and assured her that even though he would be leaving, everything was going to be okay.
But was this just a coping mechanism of a little girl stuck inside a tree? Well, listen to this. Annabelle had 2 incurable diseases affecting her digestion for the past 4 years. She couldn't eat solid foods and was in so much pain, she actually told her mother a few days before her near-death experience that she wanted to die to be free of the pain. She was ready to give up, living her life in the fetal position on the couch.
But after her fall, not only did Annabelle not have any head injuries, but she also was cured of her diseases. She came 100% off medication, started eating regular food, and basically got to be a normal kid.
Annabelle's near-death experience left her solid in her faith, even if it baffled all the doctors. Her mom says that Annabelle's story has brought hope to so many people. It was even made into a movie starring Jennifer Gardner called Miracles from Heaven.
So that's really a miraculous story. But this is just one type of near-death experience. So we wanted to look deeper and get to the bottom of this. First, what officially is a near-death experience, or NDE? It's actually a way deeper rabbit hole than we thought.
NDEs are events and experiences that happen to people when they're confronted with imminent death, life-threatening peril, or a serious illness or a terrible accident that makes them think that they are near to death.
Whether those people's lives are actually threatened or not in the end isn't the point, because according to findings presented at the 5th European Academy of Neurology Congress, NDEs are equally as common in people not in imminent danger of death as those who really had life-threatening situations like heart attacks, car crashes, near drownings, or combat.
For example, one woman was driving in the rain down the highway at night. She was speeding a little bit, but not too crazy. The rain was really coming down hard, so mostly all she could see was the dark road, her own headlights, and the drops on the windshield.
Then, out of nowhere, she felt a hand lay gently across on her chest, landing over her heart. She considered herself a spiritual person and wondered what the warning meant. So she felt a bit weird, but she kept driving.
Suddenly, red brake lights appeared in front of her, getting closer and closer. She slammed on her own brakes, but remember, it was raining. Time seemed to slow down as the car hydroplaned, and she turned the wheel to avoid hitting the car in front of her.
The car spun in a complete circle, plus another quarter. Her car was perpendicular to the direction of the road. She was stopped in the middle of the highway. But the whole experience was really on another level. As the car spun in the circle, the woman was incredibly calm. She simply thought very unemotionally, "I'm going to die."
At the same time that everything outside the car was fuzzy, everything inside the car was clear. She could hear the sound of Justin Bieber singing on the radio very...
What a terrible way to die. Oh my goodness. That's almost a near-death experience for me.
Yeah, I was like, Justin Bieber of all people.
So anyway, as she's slowly going through her own hell of hearing Justin Bieber in her final moments, what happened?
It's like, I mean, can you imagine that? Like, you're ready to die, and the last thing you hear is Justin Bieber on the radio. Well, okay, anyway, she actually thought unemotionally that it was funny to still be singing along calmly in her head in the middle of an emergency.
When the car was stopped, the woman expected the other cars on the highway to ram right into her, killing her or sending her to the hospital. But for no reason at all, she was still alive. As she slowly turned the wheel and got back into her lane, she had just enough time before the next car approached behind her, honking its horn.
As she continued driving, she wasn't afraid at all. She just thought about how she had escaped death and been protected by some guardian angel.
No, that guardian angel wasn't Justin Bieber.
I hope not. There have been many cases of people in near-death situations experiencing vivid, realistic, psychological cases like this, that it's actually an extensive pattern. They're having an NDE.
This is a way bigger than most people imagined. It's so big that researchers began to really look into it in the 80s. Actually, the University of Virginia School of Medicine has an entire division of perceptual studies. They look into how consciousness might be something beyond what mainstream science says and function outside of our bodies, even beyond what seems like physical death. If this sounds like near-death experience research, you'd be right.
And it's led by the NDE research pioneer Bruce Grayson. He found that 10% of people whose hearts stopped report NDEs. But how common is it really? Well, a 1992 Gallup poll reported 13 million Americans, or 5% of the population at that time, had experienced them. A 1982 Gallup poll said 15% of all Americans who had almost died reported them. And a survey of 2,000 Germans in 2011 showed that 4% experienced NDEs.
Basically, it became hard to ignore. 1, the experiences happened so frequently. 2, the survivors come back with information they couldn't know otherwise. And 3, the survivals themselves are such miracles that they've drawn the attention of not just people interested in spirituality. Researchers, atheists, scientists, and doctors have seen how there's something very real they can look into.
Dr. Lloyd Rudy was a cardiac surgeon. He said that one patient had to have a heart valve replacement on Christmas Day because it was infected. Basically, the man was in such a bad shape that every time they tried to get him off the heart-lung bypass machine, he would start to decline. The machine was the only thing keeping blood circulating and him breathing.
Or so they thought. After they gave up and pronounced him dead, they turned that machine off, all the tools started getting put away, and the man was closed up to be ready for an autopsy. But then listen to what happened next.
The machine that records the blood pressure and the pulse and the left atrial pressure and all the monitoring lines and things continued to run the paper out onto the floor in a big heap. Nobody bothered to turn it off. And then we put down a transesophageal echo probe, which is just a long tube that has a microphone on the end of it, and we can get a beautiful picture on a monitor of the heart beating. Well, that machine was left on, and the tape, the VCR tape, continued to run.
Right.
Well, the assistant surgeon and I went in and took our gowns off and gloves and masks and things, and came back, and we were in our short sleeve shirts, and we were standing at the door kind of discussing if there was anything else we could have done, any other medicines we could have given, whatever,
Right.
to have made this a success. And as we were standing there, it had been at least 20 minutes. You know, I don't know this exact time sequence, but it was close to 20, 25 minutes.
Right.
That this man recorded no heartbeat, no blood pressure, and the echo showing no movement of the heart, just
Right.
sitting there. And all of a sudden we looked up, and the surgical assistant had just finished closing him, and we saw some electrical activity. And pretty soon the electrical activity turned into a heartbeat. Very slow, 30, 40 a minute. And we thought, well, that's kind of an agonal thing, and we see that occasionally, that the heart will continue to beat even though the patient can't generate a blood pressure or pump any blood. Well, pretty soon we look and he's actually generating a pressure. No, we're not doing anything. I mean, the machines are all shut off, and we're stopped all the medicines and all that.
Right.
The man recovered with no neurological issues at all. For the next couple of weeks, the doctors kept questioning the man, who talked about a bright light at the end of a tunnel. But one part really amazed Dr. Rudy.
As I recall, and so on. But the thing that astounded me was that he described that operating room floating around and saying, I saw you and Dr. Catania standing in the doorway with your arms folded talking. I didn't know where the anesthesiologist was, but he came running back in. And I saw all of these post-its sitting on this TV screen. And what those were any call I got, the nurse would write down who called and the phone number and stick it on the monitor, and then the next post-it would stick to that post-it, and then I'd have a string of post-its of phone calls I had to make. He described that. I mean, there's no way he could have described that before the operation because they didn't have any calls.
No.
Right?
And he's sitting on, and he's lying on the, so he must have been floating.
He was up there.
Yeah.
He described the scene things that there is no way he knew. I mean, he didn't wake up in the operating room and see all this stuff. I mean, he was out, and was out for, I don't know, even a day or two, while we recovered him in the intensive care unit.
But did you see Dr. Rudy's face? He was really amazed. He asked the interviewer what the experience tells us. He asked, "What does that tell you? Was that his soul up there?" He said it always makes him very emotional, and he says always because, amazingly, he's seen this kind of thing more than once.
Dr. Rudy told a story about a patient who was on anticoagulants or medicines to prevent blood clots. So in his emergency surgery, they couldn't stop him from bleeding. The doctors finally gave up and knew they couldn't help him. But that's when a miracle happened. Check it out.
The anesthesiologist and I talked about it afterwards. I mean, there was no question. There was a presence in that room.
Right.
And he stopped bleeding just like that.
How do you explain that? What is your take on that, Dr. Rudy?
Oh. There's something out there that, you know, people with faith believe is there. Some people call it God, some people call it other things, Buddha or Muhammad or whoever. It has convinced me there is something out there.
Dr. Rudy said he's convinced that something more is out there.
And he said he presented this case to 13 other cardiac surgeons throughout the country in a special meeting, and amazingly, the other doctors had had similar experiences. Dr. Rudy said that everyone who deals with this every day has had those kinds of experiences.
So it's not just one doctor, but it's also not certain medical patients who have NDEs. It happens all over the place.
Just in America, Gallup reported 774 NDEs per day as of 1992. Per day.
That's crazy.
So by 2014, that would be up to, I don't know, 13 or 19 million NDEs.
Jeez.
And it just keeps going up. But who experiences them demographically? One 2015 study in the Journal of Near-Death Studies shows that 60% of experiencers were women and 33% were men. Something to look inside about, men.
Yeah, seriously. The numbers weren't exactly like this in other studies, so of course we're not sure if this is really true all the time. It could be that women just might report it more, or there are other factors here they don't know about.
The crazy part is that NDEs happen in every race, nation, culture, and background. A study of people in 35 different countries reported that 10% of all people have NDEs. And a study from the Journal of the Missouri State Medical Association found that 17% of those who nearly die report NDEs.
What does all of this mean though? Well, in the end, all the research has found that NDEs are reported by children, adults, scientists, physicians, priests, ministers, religious people, atheists, and in countries all around the world. So that's interesting because the scientists expected that the content of a young child's NDE will be limited to their vocabulary.
I tried to move my body and turn my eyes upward to see who was carrying me. What I saw was Mother Mary.
But why do we really care about NDEs?
The doctor said he was dead for about 10 minutes, almost 10 minutes. It was completely flatlined, everything.
Well, and if you know anything about, dying, that's...
Yeah.
You don't come back from that.
No, not really. Hey everyone, did you like this episode? Well, let us know in the comments. We love that you're always brutally honest. If you want to see more videos, make sure to subscribe to this channel, turn on your notifications, like this video, and if you want to watch even more awesome content, you can subscribe to rise.tv, where we have a full catalog of shows on everything from ancient civilizations, mysteries, metaphysical phenomenon, and so much more. So we'll see you out on the edge.